Hi everybody, it's Carlin and Ian from the Real Outdoor Experience, and we're going to do a bit of a sight-in video today. We're coming up on deer season, and well, moose season is coming up, and just a reminder to people to get out there and make sure your guns are still shooting like they were, when you shot them last year. So, Ken Thiessen from Vortex Canada, he's a member of the Canadian F-Class team and an expert marksman. I can say that with all confidence. The Canadian F-Class team won the silver medal in 2017 World Champions, and Ken has graciously offered to come out and just give us some pointers and some good reminders about sighting in our guns. So Ken, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to hang out with you.
Absolutely. So we've got two options that we can do, to be honest, for sighting in. Because this rifle is new to me, and I'm not sure what the accuracy capabilities of the rifle is, I'm gonna take another shot, see if it lands in the same spot. Then that gives you a pretty good indication that the shooter, the rifle system, and the ammo is doing the job, and then we can confidently make very accurate corrections. If you have some deviation between your shots, then it may be one of those things where you're shooting 3-round groups, get your average, and you're gonna try and center your group, okay? Whether that group is a 1/2 inch, 1 inch, or 2 inches, right?
We get our group and then just basically bring our crosshairs over to the center of the group, and
essentially it, and then you're done. And then you could, finalize with multiple shots again, just to verify your group centered, point of impact, point of aim, and then you're done.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll take another shot. Yeah, it is. Those 2 rounds are pretty close, right? So I'd say, the entire system's working as it should, so we can make a pretty confident adjustment off of that. So we've got a couple options how we can do this. A, we could go down range. We could measure it with a measuring tape and say, this is how much far off the group we are to center, and we'll make the corresponding adjustments on the rifle scope. I could lock myself behind the rifle. I could move my crosshairs to the bullet impacts we just did, and I should be on. Or, because our spotting scope has a reticle in it, we can measure the offset with the reticle and the spotting scope to give me a calculation to dial into the scope as well too.
Those are all very real options.
On the target, the little tiny squares are actually 1 centimeter squares. Okay. Now, if you're looking,
So if I had an MRAD scope,
it'd be 1/10 exactly. I didn't have any MOA targets, and I was going to talk about that because in most cases, the other thing is if you're running a target, which many of them come with lines that are 1 inch apart, you can count your offset on the lines, then you make your adjustment versus that way as well too. Now, another thing that you can do, because you've got the reticle in your spotting scope, right? Each one of those lines in the spotting scope reticle is worth 1 minute. So if you centered a part of the crosshair or a reference point and count how many lines up and how many lines left that group is, you could give me the same correction.
I've got 2 MOA right and 2 MOA down.
Okay, so let's try with that. So I'm gonna make my adjustment down, 2 MOA. And I'm gonna make my adjustment right, 2 MOA. Perfect, and we're gonna try that. All right, so I'll be aiming for the same target.
Your elevation looks good, but you were too far to the right.
To the right, all right. I'm gonna shoot another round. So we're probably working within the limit of our system now. When you're working within the limits of the rifle system, there's a couple things that all determine that. A is going to be the accuracy of the ammunition, the accuracy of the firearm itself, and the accuracy potential of the shooter. Because let's be honest, the guy pulling the trigger has everything to do with what's happening at the end of the barrel. You could have a gun that will shoot 1/2 inch groups at 100 all day long, but if the shooter themselves are not capable of doing that, then that's going to be your limiting factor of how accurate the entire system can be. If the shooter is not familiar with the system, hasn't had a lot of time, breathing techniques, holding the rifle, trigger squeeze, all come into play of how accurate, how consistent you can be shot to shot.
Which is also why it's so important to sight in with the ammunition that you're actually going to be using in a hunting situation. Don't sight in with a Remington Federal or a Hornady ammunition and then go buy a Winchester 150 grain off the shelf at Canadian Tire and go hunting and expect it to perform the same.
Exactly it. And here comes why it's so important for people to spend some time with their rifle systems prior to the hunting season is A, get familiar with the system itself. The more rounds you put down range, the more comfortable you're going to be with the firearm, and generally you'll see accuracy improve as you get more and more comfortable with shooting. That's why I'm a huge proponent shoot and practice all year, right? I mean, you know you're going hunting in the fall. You've got 11 other months in a year to make practice perfect and make perfect shots, right? Same thing going back to the ammunition selection. If you're going to be sighting in with cheap ammo, which lots of guys do, especially if they have expensive cartridges to shoot, and then they want to use the premium stuff for the hunting application, you can't guarantee that your point of impact and point of aim are going to be exactly the same. I've seen several inches of difference at 100 yards just switching brands of ammo. So when you want to make that clean, ethical shot, you want to make sure the bullet's going exactly where you're pointing it. Sometimes you'll get lucky and your firearm may prefer the more economically priced ammo. Or in other cases, you know, the premium ammo is priced premium for reasons of consistency and accuracy. And yeah, you may just have to technically bite the bullet and pay for the ammo to get utmost accuracy out of the rifle system.
Well, that was pretty easy. 6 shots and we've got 100 yard zero.
That's right, yeah.
Now, if we wanted to shoot out to 300, it's simply just a matter of increasing the elevation.
That's right. So as you're looking to shoot out further distances, you've got to compensate for the drop of the bullet. There's many ballistics calculators out on the market to give you very precise numbers on how to do that. But essentially now that we have a perfect 100 yard zero, if your scope, and most scopes have the option to zero your turrets as a reference point for your 100 yard zero, if you wanted to engage a target at 200 or 300 or 400 yards, whatever you were comfortable with, you would simply add the needed elevation onto the scope.
Yeah, let's go take a look at that.
All right.
So the final sort of step, now that we're very, very confident that we're dead center at 100 yards, we can actually lock the turrets in. And we're going to do that on the Vortex Viper. Not all scopes have that ability. Most do, or many do.
That's right.
It's always kind of interesting because you watch movies and you see guys, dialing up and dialing down. I always used to think that, you can't do that. That's not real. But you actually can. And that's what we're going to do right now.
We always want to have a reference mark for our zero. On this specific system, we're zeroing at 100 yards. So we want to slip the turrets to reference a zero mark on the turret. And then we always know where our 100 yard zero is. So if we are using the turrets to make elevation adjustments, if we get lost or we want to go back to our 100 yard zero, we simply go to the zero mark on the turret. So it's extremely easy to use. As you mentioned, most scope systems have this type of feature where you have some method of zeroing a scope. Some of them will have other features like zero stop and different things like that. So become familiar with your optic system, understand what it has for features and what it's able to do. A lot of the Vortex product line all have the ability to zero their turrets. A lot of them have got the ability with a zero stop, so there's lots of cool features with the product line there.
There are brass shims that we actually inserted in here so that you can't, you can just, if you get lost where you are, you can just turn the turret so that it stops and it can't go any further.
That's right.
And then just come back to where the zero mark is. We know exactly where we are at 100 yards every single time.
Working with the optic system, most scopes, there will be some type of information on the turret, and it will tell you what direction to turn for an up or down correction or a left or right correction. You are always moving the bullet impact. So if you are low, you want to turn the turret on the scope up in the up direction to raise that point of impact to match your point of aim. Now, I have fielded some questions where the individual said, well, I'm looking through my scope and I'm turning the turret in the up direction, but the crosshair is going down. Is there something wrong with my optic? And I'm like, no, there's not. It's actually operating exactly as it should. And you've got to think about what's happening at the end of the barrel. Okay, so if I'm turning the turret up, that's essentially moving my reticle in the down direction, which is forcing the end of my barrel to come up. So you're moving that in the correct direction. So there's 3 set screws on this turret, and I have my special tool here, just an Allen key, and we're just going to loosen these Allen keys on the turret. Not all the way out, you don't need to take them out all the way, but you want them almost all the way there, so there's not going to drag on anything. We're going to take those out completely. And without moving anything, you're just going to want to pull straight up, and it comes right off. Very simple.
Those are the brass shims that we were talking about?
That's right. So this specific scope, its zero system that was designed, uses these brass shims as the zero stop. Not all scopes have a zero stop feature. Vortex actually has 3 different zero stops amongst their different lines. This is one of them. So at this point, if we had additional shims to put in, we would simply stack them in the space as it's designed to. To be honest with what's here is actually very, very close. We probably don't need any more shims, and we'll be very close to having a very perfect zero stop. If we look at this turret, we have our zero mark, and if we go all the way around, it gives us a total adjustment range of about 24 minutes. That would bring us back to zero. When you're stacking the shims for the zero stop, you want to make sure that it's not going to go a complete another rev. If it did do a complete rev back to zero, you could be potentially 2 feet low at 100 yards. So we take our turret, we've stacked our shims in it. Essentially what we're going to line up is the zero mark with the center slot in the scope body here and our reference mark on the tube. We're just going to push that back down on the zero mark, right like that. We're going to make sure it's seated, which it is. And all we're going to do is we're going to make sure we don't move this. We're just going to snug these Allen keys back up. They don't need a excessive amount of torque. We want to make sure they're snugged up enough that they're not going to come loose under recoil and or back their way out, so all of a sudden the turret slips when you want to make that adjustment. Now that we've got those tight, we can verify. We'll see how far past the zero stop this is going to allow us to go in our down direction. So we'll simply turn the scope till it stops. We've only gone about 4 minutes past there.
And it locks in.
And it locks, it's stopped, okay? The one important thing to remember is when you're making adjustments on the scope, when you're getting to the ends of the adjustment range, either all the way down, all the way up, left or right, you don't want to force the turret in place because you will damage. You know, there's some precisely machined parts in the internal components of the scope, springs and other things as such. You don't want to really force on them, right? This being the zero stop, it stops comfortably there at the bottom. We know that we're on the bottom revolution. If we want our zero mark for 100 yards, it's right there. It's that zero mark.
As hunters and sport shooters, we spend a great deal of time and money on our firearms, optics, and ammunition. If we take the time to sight in our system, verify that our ammo choice works with the combination, and then practice shooting to ensure a safe and ethical shot when that time comes, you can take that shot with confidence. Special thanks to Ken Thiessen from Vortex Canada, Vortex Optics, Mossberg Firearms, Federal Premium Ammunition, and the Nook cases. Folks, having the best gear in the field is such a huge peace of mind, and it goes a long way in helping us reach our goals in the outdoors. Hunting is not easy. Help stack the deck in your favor, at least a little. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. We have many other educational and informative videos, gun reviews, hunting series for beginners, and much, much more on our channel and website. Please check us out at therealoutdoorexperience.com. Get your kids outdoors, go to the range, teach them how to sight in their system. It's a skill they will have forever. Stay safe out there, folks, and don't forget, always, keep it real. Take care for now.